Hello and welcome back to the Pop Culture Powerhouses. We have
Mm.
got an absolute monster matchup this week. The Riddler versus Ultron. Villainous creations that
Mm.
think they're so much smarter than their adversaries. Ooh.
It's quite the matchup, to be honest.
It really is.
Not necessarily who I thought these two would be like paired with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was trying to think, 'cause, to me, they both feel like A tier villains.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I'm like, to the general public, they're not that level of villain where a random person on the street has 100% chance of knowing who they are. They're not like a
no,
Green Goblin or a
no,
Joker.
true. One is definitely more chance, I think.
Yeah, Ultron's got a better chance these
Yeah,
days, I feel. But that
doesn't
is why I thought they'd be a good matchup.
true. Yeah,
So, as always, we've got our six
we
categories:
do.
iconicness, individuality, quality of adaptations, legacy, relatability, and personal preference.
Hmm.
Let's get into it.
Iconicness.
Yes. I think the Riddler is incredibly iconic because my
So do
man's
I.
branding is
Yeah, that green question mark. I mean, when you think Batman villains, he is in that like top few, I would say, of like
absolutely.
the iconic ones that everyone remembers. So yeah, he's very iconic, and the branding and the color scheme and everything that he's about, like his whole stick of everything is hidden behind a riddle. Batman has to solve it. It's pretty well known.
Yes. And you can have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, uh, Ultron. I think before the MCU, not that well known. Quite iconic.
He's he's very much an Avengers villain.
Yes,
And before the MCU, the Avengers were a joke.
there you go then.
So
Yeah, I would
yeah,
like before the MCU and he was used in that. You can guarantee that all the people that now know who Ultron on have no idea who that was. Though I would say because of that, he has now become quite the iconic villain of the MCU, especially. Um,
James Spader's performance as Ultron
mm,
was phenomenal.
even to the point where that final moment with Vision and the last Ultron robot,
Yeah,
that little monologue speech, like back and forth, has been used for memes, used on the internet, used in many different ways. Like it created a little iconic moment for that
absolutely.
character.
Really, really impressively so.
Yeah.
For sure. Individuality.
I would say the Riddler is pretty individual.
I would say of all villains, the Riddler might be one of the most individual. Because I can't think of another villain who I'm like, oh yeah, they're very similar to the Riddler.
Yeah, no, I can't think of any like, and I'm trying to think if there's other villains that are like so alone in their styles. I mean, not to the same level of like iconicness. I don't think there's any others.
No. Because every other really good villain has been kind of parodied by the other side at some point.
Yeah,
Like the Joker and Green Goblin are relatively similar.
yeah,
You've got like a Carnage or a Venom is similar to like a Bane, maybe.
yeah.
Lex Luthor and like Doctor Octopus are a bit similar, like that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Obviously, the most famous Darkseid and Thanos are seen as quite
yeah.
similar, but the Riddler's like truly unique in that sense, which is crazy when you consider how good a villain he is. The fact that he's not been parodied by the other side, or at least not successfully, to my knowledge.
Yeah, no, not to that I can think of either. I think you're right. Like,
Whereas Ultron is he's the evil robot.
yeah, it's a very
It's
well done evil
And
robot.
it's its own unique take by tying the evil robot so directly into some of the heroes and
Mm,
stuff. But it's the evil robot trope. It's
yeah,
existed since the concept of a robot. Someone
yeah.
designed the concept of a robot, and then another person walked in and went, "Yeah, but what if it goes evil?" And then the evil robot
I mean,
concept
you
was
basically
born.
could say we had it back with Terminator.
Even before Terminator, like it's been
Yeah.
around forever.
Um. Yeah, you're right. Although it's the take that kind of everyone now, the current generation probably recognize as the evil robot. It's been done before, whereas Riddler still stands alone, really, in that sense.
Quality of adaptations.
I mean, you could say for Ultron, incredible adaptation if you take the comic as its original, because, like you said, the Avengers comics and all that stuff was almost a joke back then.
Yeah,
Gets used in the MCU, suddenly everyone loves this and knows of this villain. Great adaptation for him.
yeah. I completely agree. He's also been used in cartoons in more recent years, and they've all been pretty solid
Yeah, and even in What
adaptations as well.
If, we've
Yeah.
seen him.
So I'd be pretty confident saying he has a solid quality of
Yeah, yeah.
adaptations. The Riddler.
Hmm.
Bit more up and down.
Yes, and a bit more varied in styles of
Yes.
adaptations.
Obviously, the most recent being in Matt Reeves,
Yes.
where it's pulled by Paul Dano, which I adored.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that
Uh,
version.
but then you've also got like the Jim Carrey version of the Riddler,
Yeah.
which I think gets more hate than it deserves. But
Yeah.
I also am well aware I have a massive blind spot for Jim Carrey. I think he's phenomenal. And then back to like the 60s Batman TV show with Adam West.
Yeah.
And that Riddler wasn't quite as camp as Jim Carrey, but wasn't exactly serious.
Hmm.
And then you've got all of the animated shows from over the years and the Arkham
Yeah, I was
games.
gonna say the Arkham games as well.
I would say overall, he's been pretty well adapted. There's a
Yeah.
couple of bits of the Riddler you don't really mess with. He's a little bit kooky,
Yeah.
which can be shown as funny or just like uh, genuinely unhinged.
Yeah.
And the constant speaking in puzzles and double speak.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but I think the worst Riddler performances do kind of make me think Ultron's probably better. But
Yeah.
it comes down to does the sheer amount of Riddler adaptations that are good counter the fewer Ultron adaptations without the bad outlier?
Yeah, it's tough. And you could also even say Riddler has had varied creative styles of portraying Riddler that have worked,
Yeah.
which almost shows the character can be used in quite a varied range. Whereas
Mhm.
the Ultron, we only know really one Ultron.
Yeah. I'm not wrong. I
Um,
don't disagree with that
Although
at
it
all.
was a great adaptation, but there's like we've got one to go off really,
Yeah.
mainly anyway.
Legacy.
Ooh,
Now, I'm going to go out there with the hottest part of this take.
okay, ready for it.
There is an entire generation of people, of video
Mm,
game lovers,
mm,
who shudder at the thought
mm.
of the Riddler because of them fucking trophies.
God, trying to solve those puzzles.
Yeah.
We're the
Like,
worst.
there are legitimately, like, whether he's a supervillain or not, or whether he's an S tier villain or not to comic readers, gamers who played the Arkham games are more scared of the Riddler than any other Batman villain.
They ruined many 100% completions.
Yes. Which I like, jokingly or not, is a huge part of his legacy because there are a lot of people who play superhero games but don't read the comics, and they're like, "Fucking Riddler, man!" Like, the Riddler is one of the parts of them games that makes you feel the closest to the Batman you'll ever feel. Because you're like, fucking Batman having to deal with this dickhead sorting out these elaborate ruses all the time must get so exhausting.
Hmm. Well, it's like almost as well, you got to look at it as like if you were to say villain who leaves clues in forms of riddles or puzzles, you're pretty much immediately going to go, that's probably the Riddler
Mhm.
or a serial killer.
Yeah.
And
I ironically, the
same thing.
closest yeah, the closest I'd get, like a few weeks ago when we were talking about Sherlock Holmes, I talk about how many characters he's inspired.
Hmm.
The Riddler's almost like a Moriarty style character in Evil Sherlock Holmes. Which just like I'm genuinely sat here racking my
Yeah.
brains. I can't think of anyone who's done it anywhere near. Like, let me have a little Google here. Riddler clones.
But like that's like you think Riddler pretty quickly. Like if I was to say evil robot, Ultron probably isn't going to be the first that many people jump to.
No, Evil Robot is such a broad like
Like,
it's so common,
hmm,
and you can't give any of the legacy of that trope to Ultron.
no. I would say Ultron's legacy is being one of the top villains of the MCU. So he's become iconic in that sense. Like everyone loved that villain. And then maybe that like speech that I mentioned earlier with him and Vision is kind of like a bit of legacy that it's left behind since those films.
Yeah. So the closest to the Riddler that anyone seems to be able to come up with
Uh-huh.
is a character called Arcade,
Okay.
who's an X-Men villain, and he's more around like trapping people in video games. So it's
Yeah.
not quite the same,
No.
but it that's the closest anyone can really come up with. Some people try and claim Mysterio is like the Riddler, but they are delusional. He's completely different. Mysterio is more like Mad Hatter, if anything, or vice versa. I don't know who
So yeah,
came first.
like Riddler's legacy is a lot deeper than
Yeah, it's not a legacy in the sense of inspiring characters, which is what we're used to talking about.
mm,
It's more of a legacy of being so uniquely himself that everyone knows the Riddler.
yeah.
If you would show a question mark up and go comic book character, people are
Oh yeah.
instantly thinking of the Riddler.
You could
The
show just a
question mark
green
isn't
question mark and
yeah,
people would be like,
exactly.
Riddler. Yeah.
Which I think is incredibly impressive. Relatability. This is a
Well,
bit difficult.
as everybody knows, I'm a bot. So
So people would not be crazy for assuming I have a bit of the tism.
mm.
So I feel like I'm probably more connected to the Riddler.
I get that with the whole like solving the obsession with the little puzzles.
I get a little bit obsessed with things. I don't think that's
I think
an
that's pretty
unfair characteristic to give myself.
not on the nerd podcast.
Yeah. So I think I'd probably be more sat on that side. But that being said, I'm not a big fan of clues. So I'm not a big
I
riddle guy.
I almost like I think to that speech that I keep mentioning of Ultron's where he's like he believes he can make a better world and that humans don't know what they're and it's like almost like I sense there's some relatability there of like we like to believe that we know better than some like anyone else, but we don't actually always take into consideration someone else's point of view.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. James Spader's portrayal of Ultron might be the
It helps to
most
make the
relatable.
robot relatable.
Yeah, because you sit there and you're like, no, I get why you think humans are the problem, but we can't just kill all of them. We need
Mm,
to find a better solution. He's like, no, I'm a robot. I've decided that's the optimal strategy. That's what we're doing.
yeah,
So it almost he's almost relatable by not being relatable. He's relatable by reminding you what makes you different from a machine.
yeah.
That empathy. Anyone
Maybe
who's just like, no, Ultron was right and doesn't care that you put them on a watch list. You're like,
I
yeah,
want to say most
I don't think we
people
should.
in politics get a bit too
Yeah,
close to being like Ultron.
yeah, yeah, not wrong. Um, Personal preference for me is absolutely the Riddler. I think he's one of the best, not traditionally seen as S tier villains.
I think I would lean to the Riddler as well. I think he's so classic and stands out like on his own so well.
And like we've already discussed, he works in any kind of story.
Yeah, he can work. Yeah, you can thematically change him, but still be the Riddler, and it still works so well.
You can have him doing the really like gruesome riddles, like the ones in the Batman with like the thumb
Mm,
drive and stuff,
hmm
which is just dark and gruesome, and he's a psychotic serial killer. And you can also very easily do the Jim Carrey
Yeah.
over the top, very camp, makes riddle like a lot of the riddles are just nonsense
hmm
riddles that are very easy but are annoying, and they both work and they both feel like the Riddler.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I like him so much.
Yeah. It's like,
As the bad robot trope goes, though, Ultron does a pretty good
oh
job
yeah,
there.
and I would actually even say probably one of my top villains out of the MCU. Like, I really do enjoy the Ultron character as a
Hmm.
villain, and some great moments and great performance. But like, that doesn't isn't enough to
Exactly.
sell it.
Right. So shall we rattle through this list then and decide on our winner?
Yes.
Iconicness we're given to the Riddler, the Riddle Man.
Yeah, 100%.
Individuality might be the most resounding win for a
Oh,
character so far.
yeah. Very
I
easy.
don't think before this I'd twigged before how unique the Riddler actually is.
Yeah, I feel like
Um,
all the other ones we've at least been able to think of something else close to,
yeah.
yeah, 100% Riddler.
Qu- Quality of adaptations. We need to make our decision on whether we go Ultron having few but very good adaptations is more important than the Riddler having a couple of bad ones, but a wider range of really good ones.
I feel a wider range of themes that were well adapted beats one good adaptation.
I think that's fair. So we'll give that to Riddler as well, making it
Yep.
3-0. Ultron cannot win. Legacy, tricky. I feel like Riddler's legacy just from the Arkham games is massive.
Yeah.
And that's like before you get into all of his other stuff as a Batman villain, Batman being one of the biggest characters in the world and stuff like that.
I think the fact that Riddler's been leaving his legacy around for longer than Ultron has. Ultron's legacy is spawned from the MCU, and I just don't think it's while it left an impact on our generation, there's plenty of people older than us that will have a clue where they'll know Riddler from the old
Yeah,
days.
I get that. I think that's fair. Relatability.
I'm gonna lean Ultron for me.
Yeah, I think I might agree. I do think Riddler is such a pained character that I get it, but I feel like Ultron existing to almost point a mirror at you and kind of go, the only reason we're different is because you're a human and you have empathy and you
Hmm.
do care about other people is actually sometimes a good reminder.
Yeah, I think
Because
it's
I
more
feel like on a,
relatable to the day to day like world we're
I
in.
feel I feel like with the world in the way it can be at times
Yeah. Yeah.
and how easy it is to become very pessimistic.
Mm,
Having a character like Ultron to go, yeah, but you're not like this, and why is that? Is actually quite good.
yeah.
Um, Personal preference is the Riddle Man. He's very good.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a cool character.
So that makes it 5-1 to the Riddler. He is absolutely cooked.
He
I
has.
actually feel a little bit bad. I thought him versus Ultron was going to be a good matchup. When we started really talking about it, I was like, oh no, the Riddler does cook.
Yeah, the Riddler's
The
kind of
Riddler,
good.
the Riddler kind of fucks.
I think, unfortunately, just Ultron hasn't been used enough. Like
I
he
completely
has,
agree.
like if they used more of like the Ultron we've seen in the MCU and that like how that character's portrayed, he could be such an amazing, like long lasting villain.
Yeah, I'd agree.
But we just, yeah, you just need to get him out there more.
Absolutely. But that is all we have time for. This has
It
been another
is.
Pop Culture Powerhouse. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, comment down below who you'd like to see in future episodes,
Yeah.
and we'll
We
catch you
should
next
repair.
time.
See you next week.